Thanks, Matt. And I know you mentioned ComScore and Adobe. So welcome. I'm excited to talk to you gentlemen today about the moment in advertising. Let's start with the basics. Consumers are spending an hour and a half a day on their phone, carrying it around, some demographics much higher, as you can assume. How do marketers take advantage of this functionality, and what's the difference now that the screen's in your pocket instead of in your living room?
Yeah, I think it's a massive opportunity. You haven't done it yet. Why the fuck haven't you? Is usually the question that we have. There's a lot of people obviously in this room that are in this business and know all about it. So we're very excited to have a chance to be in the forefront. But I think a lot of it's recognizing that people are going to have this always on. It's always going to be in their pockets, and they're going to take it out only various moments throughout the day. So the moments concept, as we'll hopefully have a chance to dive into a little bit more today, is about the idea of knowing when people have those needs, and instead of slapping them in the face with an ad, actually trying to acknowledge and actually add value.
This might not be the most controversial panel because Brian and I actually agree on most everything, which is really bizarre. But I would actually, I think, just to piggyback on that, the always-on capability is really what's so exciting for us marketers, and the ability to activate against a trigger or some kind of stimulus in an environment, whether it's geolocated or something a little more native. I think that ability is what advertisers and marketers have been dying for years, which is we know what you're doing, we have something relevant and contextual, and that has utility, and let's flight that. The other thing is, I just want to say, I'm really happy to be here because for once I'm not the youngest person on the panel. But you guys should all wish Brian a happy birthday because it's his birthday and I want to embarrass him. He is 18 today.
I can't drink tonight.
Yeah, right.
So let's build upon that location-aware moment, creating moments. We find that consumers are a little bit hesitant to share personal information, except when it suits their interests. So how do you tell somebody's interested, and how do you deliver that moment to them?
It's a great question. So I think when you look at the ways that people are using their phones, it's really, the moment for us is really the version of intent. So like Google had the search query, right? You had people telling the search engine. Querying is kind of an old concept, very old concept, right? So we're like, when you're using your apps, it's based on what your needs are. So with sort of the model that we had a chance to create and pioneer was the idea of, let's say you're in a running app and you're in a moment where you literally just logged a run. You're sweating, right? It's literally sweat dripping off your face. That's a perfect moment for Gatorade to be there to reward you with something, right? So that was sort of our idea of taking a moment when someone had a need and then addressing it. So I think we're all obsessed with real-time marketing. I think it's more about real-time needs addressing now. As an industry, we're actually responsible for doing that. I think our products that we represent, the brands and the brands that we represent as whoever we end up working for, have products that address needs. Like CPG is always in their mission statements of something that says, we're here to add value to your daily lives as a consumer, somewhere there for P&G, Unilever, whatever. But the marketing and the advertising rarely does that. The products do it. But the marketing and advertising right now, unfortunately, in mobile is doing the opposite. It's actually annoying you and disrupting you.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that and put it even more simply. Outside of the app space, which Brian's got locked down, I think what they're doing is amazing. It's really about utility in some sense today, trumping demography and branding. And I mean, as a marketer and advertiser, I'm trying to be really cautious about how I say that. But mobile is really offering that opportunity to be incredibly pragmatic and incredibly useful. So your example was the running app, and what we're trying to do is move our clients towards using mobile as this utility, such that as an example, if pollen count goes up in a city and we have Johnson & Johnson as a client, there's an allergy medicine that's instantly flighted and available for a potential consumer. Really, it's just all we're talking about is not even a sea change, but re-level setting where we are to take advantage of these key elements in a day. And that's what marketing has been trying to do since the beginning. It's why sandwich boards and guys stood outside the street, and why, gosh, if you were in San Francisco, as I was a few hours ago, there's guys outside of strip bars trying to get you to go in, and it's all about that contextual relevancy, and the mobile device is just offering you the most immediate form. I think where it gets interesting, and I know you want to talk about this, is how you begin to measure that and how you begin to judge efficacy in that arena.
Sure. But for some of the people in the audience who may not have Kiip, or is it Kiip?
It's Kiip.
Kiip, that's
It's
what I
okay.
thought. Who doesn't have Kiip and won't be able to capitalize that moment, they rely on targeting. And as we've talked about already, targeting isn't where it needs to be. Do you think, and thank you for the lob, do you think measurement has something to do with that? And once people can start to measure if they're hitting their audiences and if their targeting is working, we will raise the standard?
Yeah, so why don't you tell us what you guys are about to launch in 90 days?
Well, we're releasing a GRP for mobile.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, this is like an infomercial.
I know.
right now. I'm sorry.
No, that's not. No, but
Like,
seriously.
what
no,
are you
but
telling
these
us?
guys-
We
these
actually
guys,
had this
they have
conversation.
to-
No, we had this
but
conversation
they have
before.
to target, right? They
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah.
They're not Kiip.
So
They're
we're
gonna
not saying that
target.
targeting should be removed. I think targeting should always be there, and yes, there should be third-party measurement to ensure that there's the validity there and that people can be held, to a certain standard. I think that's all table stakes. No offense. I think that obviously when shit gets bought, it has to be measured. Otherwise, how else do you know how you're spending your money? I think what we're realizing though is that reach and frequency, which I sort of hope that the GRP for mobile is a means to an end, just
It
because
is a means to
it's
an end.
getting the marketer, the older guy or woman who's saying, hey, in the older generations who are like, hey, GRPs were the best.
Over 18.
Sorry, guys. Let's just face it, though. They're very comfortable with the reach and frequency metric. They're like, this is what we need. And so I'm so happy you guys are like, let's do a GRP for mobile. And then I can almost hear a collective sigh of relief from all these CMOs going, oh, finally, someone who understands
Something
us.
I can
yeah,
understand,
exactly.
yes.
What's all this madness about, moments?
Little
Exactly.
kids marketing.
Exactly. So I think that's the issue, though, is that if we are so reliant on the reach and frequency metrics still as the way to measure success in mobile, we're going to ultimately have a huge issue, which is reach and frequency work very well for lean back media, and you have people who, the marketer hoped that the many times it showed you something, yes, you will pay attention and maybe you'll feel better if the ad was funny or whatever. But unfortunately, in mobile, like I used the joke, and it's kind of overused now that I've said it like 30,000 times. It's like you ask a girl out 10 times, she says no. Doesn't mean asking her out another 10 times means she's going to say yes. And in mobile, in fact, she's going to take a restraining order out on you. And in mobile, it's the same deal, right? You're on your phone, you see it so many times. Last straw, you're going to pay that $2 to remove those ads, right? My girlfriend was just playing 2048. You guys check out that game so far. It's super addictive. But the ad is so close to the bottom of the play area that she kept on tapping on it by accident. And these are just things that, again, because of the reach and frequency, the incentive for the developer too, and I'll let you talk in a second. The incentive for the developer, I'm on a rant right now. The incentive for the developer is let me show the ad as many times as I can possibly find because the incentives were built off of the metrics that the buyer's buying and the measurer is measuring. So that's the core issue. So the measurer, the buyer are all buying on a metric that none of us agree with when we're experiencing on our device. So we need to, as a collective group, and this is my rally cry for all of us in this room, we're all leaders here, we all have our thought leadership hat on. These guys understand that this is not about how many times anymore. It's about, is there value? And in fact, less is more should be the fundamental desire.
Right. Well, I agree with you that the measurement will evolve. I think unlocking it requires a reach and frequency metric for the collective side that you need to trigger. But yes, I think that the platform of mobile offers you a completely different and new experience. Any thoughts on how you guys are capitalizing on that?
How do I top that? Now, I believe in a lot of what Brian's saying, and I think it's especially compounded when we're talking about mobile. Where it gets interesting for me, frankly, and for what we're doing at the agency, is when you take that even outside of mobile and use the lexicon and the vocabulary that's being developed here, and for once, rather than having traditional or linear dictate what's happening on digital, we're actually rechanging the way we think and conceive of things. So it's digital bubbling up, and by that I mean we're take this with a grain of salt, trying to move away from the GRP in some sense to the individual and marketing to people, not necessarily populations, and moving away from frequency to moments. And I think where it gets super exciting, and we talk even with television and everything being platform agnostic, we move away from maybe a media or marketing mix to potentially a moments mix or a behavior mix. I prefer a moments mix. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And I think it's really exciting to see thought leaders like Brian, and companies digitally that are thinking about this and giving us the tools to reinvent the language, reinvent the industry, because we've been doing it the same for about 60 years. Right. And this is where it gets exciting. And I think Nielsen and the mobile GRP certainly have a huge part of this. And it's part of it. And I think that hopefully we won't be thinking about things as such discrete elements. And it's this entire moments mix, and it's important to know that this is what we're capitalizing here, and this utility there, and that pragmatism there. So it's a really exciting time, and that's not quite the rant that Brian had.
No, I think ultimately the differentiator here that we need to create is something like moments. This is the whole point of this panel, right? Come up with something to differentiate us, because we're all a little too defeatist sometimes. We'll walk into conversations, you're pitching a normal mobile banner ad, it's like, you get a shitty eCPM, you're just like, all right, whatever, I guess it's because my inventory is kind of like, I understand that people don't like it. Meh. That's the thing, right? Don't be so defeatist, right? The problem is that mobile real estate is actually incredibly valuable. When we talk about that dollars to pennies, or to dimes, to nickels, to pennies. That is only because we've enabled them, these guys, to buy in a way that makes us only differentiate by price. Right. And the moment we come to mobile, it's like, okay, it's cheaper now. But because of some programmatic desire, not because of some real understanding of what people are doing, right? So the fundamental issue here is that we need to know and expose the value of the mobile screen, the positives. I mean, we're all supposed to be really good at exposing, as entrepreneurs, the strengths that we have on mobile is that the screen is not a limiting thing just because it's smaller. In fact, it's a lot more intimate. In fact, we've heard all this stuff, like we sleep with it, we unlock it like 100 times a day, we spend hours and hours on this thing. It's the first screen. And I think the more we collectively go in and say, yes, I will not take 50-cent eCPMs as an acceptable reality. That's BS, right? This thing has to be much more valuable than that, and using a differentiator and data streams like what Gregg's creating with Moments Marketing within as an organization, and hopefully across with more media buyers and organizations alike, is that this should be something that you understand the emotional value behind.
Yeah, and that will happen. I mean, even, yes, we're moving towards that, but part of this is a natural progression, right? Where, I believe, and I think we can all agree with this, we are moving to a platform agnostic time period. I don't care anymore. The mobile device is paramount because it's personal and it's always there and always on, but I don't care if it's television or outdoor or whatever. It's just, is it relevant and is it immediate to my consumer? And that's the most important thing. And I think, unfortunately, we have to sort of make these giant robotic steps and force the change in the way we think, and force a change in the way we talk, because it's important to change the lexicon and the vocabulary, because that's going to help lead this. Because I agree with you. There shouldn't be, it's not bottom of the barrel CPMs, right? No. It's not anything that should be.
I mean, I would argue that the bottom of the barrel CPMs were a result of a GRP lacking in the online world for so long. I understand you have to give a bridge from the other side. How many conferences do I go to and everybody on stage, we're gonna steal from TV. $70 billion, it's all ours, mobile's better. Well, you're gonna have to build the bridge, because no one is gonna sit there and throw more than a couple dollars, because their kids are on Instagram, to mobile. Seriously, we're talking about CMOs of huge companies, right? So you have to build the bridge, and once they're here and you've introduced the fluidity between the worlds, now you can say, and guess what? On top of your GRP, I've delivered this many moments, and this was my effect, and these were my purchases.
My most memorable conversation with a Fortune 100 CMO was about a month ago, and he told me, just he now, so you can kind of filter it out. But he said,
I was like, why?
Exactly. It's like, why
so you've
have
eliminated
you guys 4? Why are you still, like, I was questioning some of the things, just because, we kind of have this sort of advisory type relationship, and he's just like, I was like, why are you buying pre-roll video, for example? I kept on asking that for mobile. And he's like, well, I don't have any better alternative in terms of branding. And so I think what we are responsible for exposing too is, yes, there's a lot of amazing technologies for cross-screen, for GRPs as a bridge. There's a lot of bridging right now. And in fact, a lot of companies have bridge in the name too. And I'd like to have bridge not be the focus right now. The means to the end is still a little bit too much of the focus as an industry. I think once we take, I would say it's important to take exponential leaps. This is our duty as an industry within this region of the world, is to do the exponential leaps to show people what's possible. And I can't focus on lexicon enough. Yes, it's words. But the words is what makes a difference. So we actually did a study with IPG Labs a few months ago. We actually put people in a room, had facial recognition stuff on emotions to see if people were happier when they got rewards, but that's besides the point. We had a qualitative segment where we had people use words to describe the full screen banner ad sort of category and then what we were doing. And there were words like annoying, full screen, for the full screen stuff, and then still ads. And then for us, it was better, whatever, rewarding, delightful, and still ads. So they were still calling, as a consumer, they were still calling it ads. But the problem is when a consumer now has this expectation that we've unfortunately collectively contributed to, that when they walk into a free media experience, that the advertising is going to be terrible, that's when we all lose. So when you use a different word to describe it, that's when people start to go, okay, that's a little bit different, right? It's moment-based. It's using something that I might need. It's something that's going to add value. That, I think, is ultimately going to make the difference. And yes, some people may fake it till they make it for a while, but we just need something to talk about it that isn't just the word ad. And I really hope we can all do that.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something that's really fundamental. Yeah, we talked about vocabulary, but there has to be, and I'm not saying anything that we haven't all said a million times, but there has to be a sense of a fair exchange with the consumer.
Yes.
And that's all it is. And I think, with what your platform does, there's a pragmatism there and an immediacy that is incredibly useful for the consumer. So there's no doubt that you're getting some benefit. It's a little softer of an argument when you talk about branding, unless it's incredibly captive and relevant. But that's what we're moving towards. And I think, it's odd for somebody who, and I obviously don't come out of media because I probably wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing. I mean, I come out of a digital world for sure, but it's really on the corp dev and biz dev side. So I think I am freed right now to work with guys like Brian and say, hey, how are we going to reinvent what we do? Because it hasn't changed quickly enough. And we're spending way too much money, and we all want to be more effective than we are. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us, and I know now I'm getting on my high horse, but we have this opportunity to take giant leaps and not just do what we've been doing. And yes, I believe in television and I believe in digital, but I also believe that we can be executing so much more effectively than we're doing. I think we're just now beginning to get there, and I think you're right. It's big leaps and big changes in the way.
One last thought, and I hope we have time for questions, so I know we've been ranting at you. Hopefully we get some response. But I think there's an opportunity, too, to combine categories. So one thing we learned just by being able to have that value exchange, I really don't like those two words, but I'll use it for the sake of this potential discussion, is the idea of people actually combining performance and branding. So historically, performance and branding related dollar budgets were separate, right? And the reason is performance would never really help increase your brand, but in mobile, because everything is DR focused, people forget that the opportunity to actually capture it for a branding opportunity actually allows you to combine both of them. And so people are actually willing to answer questions for you, become a part of your CRM strategy, and you shouldn't always be like, well, I'm afraid that person may not be willing to opt into this because it's a mobile ad. So I think we have also a duty to combine categories. So whether it be loyalty, promotions, DR, brand-related dollars, those are the things that we should show our clients that those things can be properly combined. And that's when we get a bigger budget too, by the way. So we can fight collectively, not fight against TV, but TV will always be there just because we're gonna watch it so much. But there's gonna be a collective sort of shifting of dollars from different budgets combining, right? And I think that's ultimately where some of the extra value is gonna come from too. We see dollars coming from CRM and loyalty budgets.
Below the line.
Below the line stuff, it's great.
Yep.
All right,
questions?
questions.
Everybody agrees.
Everyone's
agrees?
scared you're gonna
Are we
rant at them
tweeting
if
a
you
lot of thumbs
take a
up and whatever type of thing? Anybody? I mean, I don't think people disagree, but maybe there's certain other colors that you guys should add and perspectives, whatever. What's up?
Just clarify some of the, you were talking about just the vocabulary of it and calling it something different in terms of calling it moment rather than an ad
Yeah.
experience just somehow heightens it.
Yeah.
What about an experience where you get the user to call it something different? How do you get to a point like that where they actually look at it and say, no, this fundamentally is something different, not because
Yeah.
I told it, because I believe it.
They do. They call it a reward.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, so they do call a reward for us, and that's obviously our plug, but I think for the industry overall, it comes down to the product, right? Like when we show something, users aren't stupid. They'll know if it's just an ad, right? And I think we need to be very clear with how we create. I mean, this is a much larger discussion, but of course, standards are going to be part of this, right? How we look at creative and how we look at creating that. You have companies that have obviously succeeded in making tools to create those ads, whether it be Flight or MediaLets or whatever it is. But I think those guys also have a big responsibility to push this forward rather than being the guys that respond to clients a lot, right? So I think we all deal with this. We're in conversations like, oh shit, should we push back? Or should we just take it just because we know we want the revenue or whatever it is? I think we should hopefully ask ourselves a couple questions in that process of maybe we should push back. Because I do notice in a lot of conversations with clients, they'll ask us for things just because they feel like asking for it. It may not actually be something they need. They just ask for the sake of asking, which is fine. And so I think when we have the chance of being like, they want us to be advisory to them too. Be like, maybe this format, maybe, you know. So when we first started too, because when the Retina display came out with the rewards for Kiip, people would come back with creative, what they would put into our system where the words would be tiny when you would end up being in a reward unit because it was a Retina display. And then we had to explain to them, yes, it's a Retina display. Just because it's big on your Photoshop screen doesn't mean you can make it tiny text. So these are the things we have to push back on. As simple as that sounds, sometimes you have to go through multiple creative revisions just to get font sizes to increase, which is really fucking annoying, but that's just part of the industry. So I think these are the things too that we hopefully can represent in the actual product that we show. And other things like, guys, Retina display's been around for a while now. Why are all my ads blurry as hell, right? Like whoever is serving this stuff should know this, right? Figure that out, right? That's another big issue. Like just simple things. If we can't figure out resolution, like, man, all this other stuff is gonna be really difficult. Sorry,
Yep.
we're done? Okay. We're done. All right,
With
thanks,
that,
Matt.
we're gonna wrap up.
Okay, cool.
Find the birthday boy
Yeah,
at Cocktails.
all right.
Get him
All
a
right.
drink.
Thanks
All
a
right,
lot, Matt.
so
Thanks,
much.
guys.